The story starts with Crown Prince Alfonso loudly calling out to Lady Alexandra, shouting that he has run out of patience for her repeated wrongdoings. He formally announces that he is breaking off their engagement. Alexandra stands silently in the spotlight of the ballroom while the guests look on. She recognizes the man as her fiancé, Lord Alfonso, the first prince of the Kingdom of Tarraconensis. She notes that she is currently standing in the middle of her own public condemnation event. Lucia, a baron's daughter whom Alexandra refers to as Potato Girl, begs Alexandra to admit to her crimes so that Lord Alfonso will forgive her. Alexandra remains silent, observing that the crown prince is infatuated with a potato girl instead of her. She notices the surrounding crowd and recognizes that everyone present is an ally to the prince and Lucia. At this point it becomes clear she has no one on her side, so subscribe if you want to see how she turns this around. Alexandra realizes that she seems to have no way out of the current situation. She looks up with a slight smile, considering the possibility that she may actually have a way out after all. Alexandra realizes that she came prepared and tells them to enjoy their remaining time while they still can. She reflects that the entire situation began exactly one day earlier. Alexandra clarifies that one day ago was when everything fell apart, pondering the accusations of wrongdoing made against her. She questions the exact meaning behind the claims made about her actions. The timeline shifts back to 24 hours before the event, showing the outside of a large estate. Alexandra receives bad news inside her quarters. She sits at a table and realizes that her life is about to end. Alexandra notes that she has 24 hours before facing a cancelled engagement and public condemnation, wondering what she should do because she is completely doomed. She experiences a spinning head and nausea, concluding that this is the worst possible situation. Alexandra decides that she needs to calm down and think through her situation clearly. She reviews her background, noting that she is the daughter of one of the 3 great dukes in the Kingdom of Tarraconensis. Alexandra reminds herself that the Kingdom of Tarraconensis sits on a peninsula and that her own family has a very long history within the realm. She then reflects on her engagement to Crown Prince Alfonso, which required her to undergo rigorous training from a young age to prepare for her role as an empress. Alexandra remembers how she only ever envisioned a future alongside Alfonso, believing she would spend her life as his empress. She recognizes that her expected path has suddenly changed. Alexandra sits alone and accepts the fact that Alfonso is now entirely infatuated with the other girl. She recalls that her feelings for the prince were not natural but cultivated, as she felt nothing special during their first meeting. Alexandra notes that she gradually forced herself to like Alfonso because she wanted to avoid a miserable marriage based solely on duty. She explains that because of her choices, she eventually grew to love Alfonso genuinely from her heart. Alexandra adds that she even began to hope Alfonso would return her love. She recalls a statement accusing her of only seeing Lord Alfonso as the crown prince. Alexandra remembers a past moment when she encountered Lucia in a palace hallway. She reflects on the specific words that Lucia directed toward her during that previous encounter. Alexandra states that Lucia's comment made her incredibly angry. She insists that she truly loves Alfonso as a man, noting that Lucia's words completely dismissed her lifelong efforts, her way of life, and her feelings. Alexandra reveals that she knew Alfonso favored Lucia for a long time, even though Alexandra was his actual fiancée. She clenches her fist, concluding that she simply could not tolerate the situation any longer. Alexandra notes that her jealousy turned to malice. Other noble girls mocked Lucia for being the daughter of a baron, warning each other that her poverty would rub off on them if they got too close. She explains that she directed all of her malice toward the potato girl. Nearby girls made comments about Lucia's uniform being completely torn up and dirty. Alexandra looks out a window and states that she never hired anyone to physically attack Lucia. She admits to indirectly encouraging others to do her bidding so she would not be directly involved. She places her hand on the window glass and realizes it was a harmful cycle. The more she acted against Lucia, the more Lucia's simple nature stood out, drawing the prince closer to her. Alexandra reflects on how the situation escalated to the point where Lord Alfonso became openly hostile toward her. She mentions hearing rumors that Alfonso and Lucia had already confessed their love for each other, noting that the prince's dislike for her only grew stronger. Alexandra looks ahead to the upcoming social gathering at the academy, concluding that Alfonso plans to use her wrongdoings as a reason to remove her and choose Lucia instead. She slams her hands onto the table, stating that she refuses to accept this outcome from the potato girl. Alexandra sits alone at her desk, declaring her intention to completely destroy the other woman. She notes that those angry thoughts were exactly what she was fixated on as she approached her chair. Alexandra explains that as soon as she sat down, she suddenly felt a severe dizziness, and memories belonging to an unfamiliar person began flowing into her mind. She realizes those memories belonged to her past life as an ordinary office worker in her second year of adulthood. She remembers being an unattractive and plain person who never had a boyfriend, had a slender build, and spent her time reading light novels, manga, and playing games. Alexandra states that she does not know the reason why she suddenly recalled these memories from her previous life. She shifts her focus to what is truly important, which is her current identity. Alexandra recognizes that her current self is identical to a character from a game called Dokiden, where she is cast as the love rival and main villainess. She also notes that her physical appearance matches that character perfectly. She struggles with severe dizziness as she comes to the certain realization that she is living inside the actual world of that game. Alexandra acknowledges that she is starting to feel sick again and tells herself to get a firm grip on the situation. She realizes that Dokiden is a standard romance game about a commoner heroine, represented by the potato girl, who is adopted by a poor baron and enters a school for nobles to form relationships with the men she meets. Alexandra realizes that she is the exact person who blocks the main character in every single story path of the game. She notes that she gets ruined in most of those paths, criticizing the choice of the writers. She then tries to figure out which specific storyline the potato girl is following right now. Alexandra looks at the large group of men already won over by the potato girl, including the crown prince, the king, and the butler, realizing that this situation leads straight to the reverse ending. She becomes enraged, wondering why the potato girl is pursuing so many different interests at once. Alexandra reflects that in this particular conclusion, the heroine successfully becomes the crown princess while keeping all the other male targets deeply infatuated with her. She collapses onto her desk feeling physically sick, directed entirely at the actions of the potato girl. Alexandra recognizes that while she is normally destined to be publicly ruined at the feast the next day, the reverse harem storyline functions differently. She details how this specific path avoids a public condemnation entirely because the potato girl forgives her, forcing the two of them to settle their differences and remain friends forever. Alexandra reacts with intense anger, declaring that such a peaceful resolution is a total humiliation that she will never tolerate. She decides that she would rather die or face terrible punishments than ever make up with that woman. Alexandra declares that she is someone who worked to become the leader of the nation and will keep her pride throughout the ordeal. She states that she will never beg for mercy from the potato girl. Alexandra stops shouting and begins to quietly review her actual options. She considers how to change a losing situation, deciding that she must move her pieces strategically to make the other girl make a mistake. Alexandra remembers that the reverse ending is the hardest outcome to reach in the game and cannot happen through normal choices. She concludes that the potato girl is also a reincarnated person who has been secretly laughing while watching her follow the scripted villain path. Alexandra reasons that the potato girl likely has her guard down because her happy ending seems completely guaranteed at this stage. Suddenly, she smiles, noting that she is unfortunately no longer a simple computer program following a script. Alexandra stands by the window and notes that she still has time to make her moves. She observes that the condemnation event takes place tomorrow night. Alexandra states that the event is exactly 24 hours away, resolving to turn the situation around completely. She decides on her first step and rings a small hand bell. A maid steps into the room and responds to the sound of the bell. Alexandra's personal attendant, Zenith, approaches and asks if her mistress called for her. She confirms that she did, explaining that she has a specific task to entrust to Zenith. Zenith agrees immediately, stating that she will follow the orders of her mistress. Alexandra instructs Zenith to go and immediately investigate a butler named Harold, causing the attendant to look surprised. Zenith seeks clarification about the butler named Harold, and Alexandra confirms that the name is correct. Alexandra asks if Zenith is unable to complete the request, and after a moment of silence, Zenith answers that she is capable. Zenith bows respectfully and tells Alexandra to leave the investigation completely to her. With 23 hours remaining until the event, a collection of books and tied papers sits on a desk. Zenaida confirms that these items were discovered inside his room. Zenaida speaks directly to her mistress, stating that the findings match exactly what Alexandra suspected from the beginning. Alexandra remains seated and notes that the outcome is just as she expected. She commends Zenaida for her good work while the attendant bows respectfully. Alexandra reflects that Harold is a target for the other girl and intends to betray her at the upcoming event by revealing her misdeeds. She notes that he would need proof to achieve this, which is why she ordered Zenaida to search his quarters while he was away. She looks at a massive stack of journals detailing numerous wrongdoings. She expresses disbelief that he chose to preserve such a large amount of evidence. Alexandra realizes that this evidence will give her the leverage she needs to act against him, and she calls out to Zenaida to deliver her next command. She commands Zenaida to go and summon Harold. After Zenaida complies, Alexandra adds that she must also call for a few of the other household servants. Zenaida asks for clarification regarding whether the other servants should be included. Alexandra requests that her attendant deliver a specific message to them, and Zenaida agrees to do so. Alexandra smiles and instructs Zenaida to deliver the exact message that there is a traitor within their household. A knock sounds at the door as the chapter starts. Harold enters the room and apologizes for keeping his mistress waiting, stating that he came because she called for him. Alexandra tells Harold to come closer, and Zenaida takes her leave to exit the room. Harold stands before the desk and asks how he can be of service. Alexandra remains completely silent. Alexandra observes Harold making a harmless face while he is actively trying to double-cross her. Harold shows confusion as Alexandra calls out his name. She states directly that Harold is fired and commands him to leave the house immediately. Harold wonders to himself why this is happening so suddenly. He asks his mistress if he has done something that did not meet her satisfaction. Alexandra sighs and states that she is fully aware that he likes the potato girl. Harold reacts with sudden shock. Alexandra clarifies that whoever he likes is not the issue, but prioritizing that girl over his master is a completely different story. Harold is startled by the mention of prioritization and states that he simply considers Lucia to be a lovely woman. Alexandra responds with an expression of mild amusement. Alexandra points out that Harold is already on a first-name basis with the girl. She describes Lucia as a woman who makes advances toward the crown prince as well as numerous other men, concluding that she has no idea what part of that behavior Harold finds lovely. Harold reacts with total speechlessness. Harold swallows hard objects, stating that describing the situation in that way makes it seem as though Lucia is seducing and deceiving men. He requests that his mistress retract the statement. Alexandra wonders if Harold is trying to give her commands now as she rings her hand bell. The doors suddenly burst open and several household servants enter the room, causing Harold to look back in surprise. The servants grab Harold and strike the back of his leg to force him down. Harold reacts with shock and demands to know what they are doing. Harold collapses to the floor under their grip and asks Alexandra to stop calling him by that name. He looks up in frustration as footsteps approach, demanding to know what his mistress is doing. Alexandra looks down at him and states that he is no longer a servant of the house. Alexandra calls out to Zenaida, who answers as she enters the room. Harold turns around in confusion, but his face fills with shock when he sees Zenaida holding the stack of documents. One of the servants opens a journal to read it, prompting Harold to scream at Zenaida to stop. The journal entry describes a secret late-night meeting with the leader of an underground organization on a specific date. It records that multiple gemstones were traded for a contract to stage an attack on Lucia. Zenaida continues reading from the journal, stating a specific date and time for a tea party with multiple classmates. She reads that Harold spoke of rumors concerning Lucia as if they were factual to isolate her further. Harold looks down with a strained expression. Zenaida adds that Harold also kept records of all of his mistress's movements and behaviors. Harold reacts with silent panic. Alexandra looks down at the journal and states that it is unfortunate for Harold to dishonor her and the entire household in this manner. She leans forward over her desk and demands to know if Harold has an explanation for what he did. Harold grits his teeth in silence. Harold speaks up loudly, stating that he does have an explanation and argues that Alexandra's actions against Lucia were unjust in the first place. Alexandra cuts him off, stating that her ears hurt every time she hears Lucia's name, and orders the servants to shut him up. A servant pulls a cloth over Harold's mouth, muffling his voice as he tries to speak. Alexandra notes that she just remembered something while Harold makes muffled noises from the floor. She says that because Harold served under her in some capacity, she is throwing an object at him, which flies through the air and hits him in the head. Alexandra explains that Harold can keep the item as his severance pay. The object pops open on the floor to reveal valuables, leaving Zenaida and the other servants surprised. The open box reveals a highly valuable necklace adorned with a large gemstone. A servant looks at the jewelry and speaks to her mistress, stating that she recognizes the item. A memory shows Prince Alfonso presenting the jewelry box to Alexandra, stating that the gift was chosen specifically to suit the future empress. Alfonso added that he selected the piece himself, and Alexandra accepted the gesture, stating that it was fine. Returning to the present, Alexandra smiles and states that she has no need for the necklace anymore. Alexandra closes the box, noting that if it is sold in the correct place, the money will allow him to live for the rest of his life without working. She shoves the box against Harold's gagged face, stating that he should thank her in tears. Harold looks up at her in silence. Alexandra delivers a final farewell to Harold, commanding him never to show his face to her again. The servants drag Harold out of the room through the double doors while he mutters that this cannot be happening. The doors close completely. Alexandra expresses satisfaction that the first person has been successfully handled, bidding him goodbye forever while Zenaida stands nearby. Alexandra reflects on how difficult it is to manage everything on her own as someone who is accustomed to simply giving orders. She decides it is time to move on to the next matter. Zenaida speaks to her mistress, stating that she was surprised to discover Harold was secretly conspiring against her. Alexandra remarks that love is blind, stating that Harold likely became a fool because of the potato girl. She then shifts her focus to the next person. She points directly towards Zenaida, indicating that her attendant is the next individual to be addressed. Alexandra recalls that during the condemnation event scheduled for the next day, Zenaida is destined to abandon her quickly. She decides that she will buy out Zenaida before that abandonment can take place. Alexandra addresses Zenaida to present a proposal, and Zenaida responds by asking what that proposal involves. She looks back over her shoulder and asks Zenaida if she wants to serve directly under her rather than working for the household. Zenaida asks for clarification on whether this means she will serve only her mistress. Alexandra confirms the arrangement and states that she will provide the payment for it, leaving Zenaida in silence. Alexandra observes Zenaida and notes that her expression looks like someone who is trying to determine if she is planning something. She reflects that this reaction is understandable given how she has behaved up until this point. She decides to take immediate action. She places a jewelry box on the table and opens it up. Alexandra presents the collection of jewelry inside the box and offers it to Zenaida as a down payment for her exclusive service. Zenaida stands completely speechless at the sight of the valuables. Alexandra clarifies that she is not offering the entire collection at once. Zenaida requests permission to ask a single question. When Alexandra tells her to proceed, Zenaida states that she wants to know the reason why she was chosen. Alexandra explains that since Zenaida currently serves the entire household, she would naturally follow suit if Alexandra's father decided to cut her off. When Zenaida attempts to clarify her current loyalty, Alexandra flatly rejects the point. Zenaida smiles and states that since her mistress is so determined to secure her loyalty, it is difficult to refuse the offer. She requests to select 4 specific items from the box. Alexandra is surprised by the lack of hesitation and tells her to go ahead and choose as she pleases. Zenaida expresses her appreciation for the permission. Zenaida states that she looks forward to their future work together and requests that her overtime hours be paid as well. Alexandra watches her and questions whether she made the right decision, noting that the attendant is far more cunning than she originally anticipated. Alexandra clears her throat to change the subject, stating that she needs something from Zenaida right away. Zenaida expresses confusion. She points forward and apologizes, stating that she will not allow Zenaida to sleep tonight. Zenaida pulls back in surprise and wonders what her mistress means. Alexandra becomes annoyed and demands to know what Zenaida is imagining, clarifying that she does not have interests of that nature. Alexandra explains that many tasks must be completed before tomorrow, and she expects Zenaida to travel to multiple locations to carry them out without any complaints. She slams her hand down on the table, stating that she will now deliver the instructions. She tells Zenaida to either memorize the details or write them down so they are remembered. Zenaida immediately begins writing down the commands in her notebook as she listens to the instructions. She looks up with concern and asks her mistress if she truly intends to execute this entire plan. Alexandra confirms her intention and specifies that the plan must remain a complete secret from her father, adding that she will explain everything when the proper time arrives. Zenaida agrees to comply at once. Alexandra tells Zenaida to depart and orders her to summon Isidro first. Zenaida signals her understanding and exits the room, leaving Alexandra alone as the final moments of preparation begin. She resolves that she must begin making her own preparations as well while the window shuts firmly with a clear sound. Outside the estate under the night sky, a man observes that the summons are sudden as usual while he adjusts the rings on his fingers. The wealthy merchant Isidro greets Lady Alexandra and states that she looks beautiful as always. Alexandra dismisses the praise and asks if he heard about her request from Zenaida, and Isidro confirms that he did. Isidro asks if the details provided by the attendant are true. Alexandra relaxes on the couch and states that the information is correct without a doubt. Alexandra gestures to the room filled with various dresses and trunks, asking the merchant to take every single item away. She finishes her command by asking him to exchange all of the luxury goods for cash. The third chapter begins with a focus on the upcoming dissolution of the engagement. Isidro chuckles while looking over the luggage, noting that the collection includes items he originally supplied to her. He looks toward his client and asks if something about his past services failed to meet her expectations. Alexandra answers that she has been fully satisfied with his previous work and tells him to rest assured because her current necessities remain kept away. Alexandra gestures toward an empty chair and tells him to sit so she can explain her needs quickly, causing Isidro to gasp in surprise. Isidro smiles as he prepares to take a seat, stating that she normally makes him stand and wondering about the reason for the change. Alexandra shows her irritation and thinks that he speaks far too much, commanding him to simply sit down. Isidro looks at the massive pile of boxes and comments on the large quantity of goods. She asks if he still buys back second-hand clothing, and Alexandra confirms that they do. Alexandra asks what purpose he could possibly find for custom-tailored dresses. Isidro explains that a demand exists for these luxury items among the less wealthy nobility, adding that there are further reasons as he taps his rings. Isidro explains that some buyers are eager to purchase the used personal belongings of a duke's daughter. Alexandra states that his words mean her items will fall into the hands of people who have strange hobbies. Isidro states that if it displeases her then he will arrange for that not to happen. Alexandra tells Isidro that she does not care what happens to the items and that he can do as he pleases since she has handed them over to him. He laughs and thanks her for her generosity while Alexandra reflects that this major merchant is heavily connected to the criminal underground. She considers how Isidro handles illegal trades, spies, and violent acts for the right price, recalling that she used his services to hire the thug who targeted Lucia. Alexandra notes that several of her planned moves for the following day require Isidro's assistance, which is why she must raise immediate cash by selling her belongings. She declares that her ultimate goal is to crush all of the men who support Lucia and plan to condemn her. Isidro asks if he can begin evaluating the goods, and Alexandra tells him to use workers who will keep the matter entirely secret. Isidro agrees and claps his hands to call his assistants into the room to start inspecting the clothing and valuables. Alexandra states that she has a few requests to make using the money from the sale. Isidro replies that he already learned the main details from her maid. Alexandra states that she is glad their discussion will be fast. She requests that Isidro secretly monitor Lucia's bedroom tonight, causing Isidro to acknowledge the order. Isidro points out that Lucia is the person Alexandra dislikes, and Alexandra commands him to remain silent or face her punch. She states that she wants a complete record of everything that happens in that room until dawn. Isidro states that her request to check the bedroom reveals the nature of the event, and Alexandra confirms his statement. Alexandra reflects that the game script contains a private meeting between the Crown Prince and Lucia on the night before the condemnation. She states that she does not care about the specific details of their meeting, internally calling it unpleasant, as she shifts her focus to her true goal. Alexandra notes that she requires absolute proof that the prince committed infidelity while they were still engaged. She adds that they might also catch Lucia secretly interacting with another individual if they are lucky. Isidro smiles and states that because the workers will receive high pay to watch the room, he will have plenty of volunteers for the job. He asks when she wants to receive the update, and Alexandra states that she needs the report as soon as day breaks. Isidro observes that she clearly has her own reasons for the tight schedule and accepts the morning deadline. He asks if she has any other demands, and Alexandra introduces her next plan regarding the son of the general, which Isidro notes must be completed before tomorrow morning. Alexandra continues to explain the specific details of her remaining plans to Isidro inside the room. She reflects that her list of requests is finally finished, and Isidro signals his complete agreement. Isidro states that he will subtract the payment for all of these operations from the total value of her appraised goods. Alexandra smiles and confirms that they have successfully reached an agreement. She states that she expects good results from Isidro this time as well, and Isidro replies that she can leave the tasks entirely to him while welcoming her continued business. Isidro chuckles quietly while Alexandra sits back on the couch, feeling satisfied with the development. Zenith stands near the doorway after watching the entire meeting in secret, internally noting that the merchant is a complete scoundrel. Alexandra sighs as she observes her room, stating that all of her luxury items have been successfully cleared out. She reflects that her day has been highly chaotic so far and notes that it is almost time for her to be summoned downstairs for supper. Alexandra explains that her family gathers for supper every night because it is the only time their busy father can show his face, adding that their mother handles the primary education of the children. She notes that her older brother Cecilio has grown to excel because of their mother's training and will likely take over as the head of the family in a few years. Alexandra lists her younger siblings as the twins Viviana and Placido, and the youngest sister Esmeralda, clarifying that Placido is already engaged and Esmeralda is still being educated. She reflects that her sister Viviana is the actual problem. Alexandra notes that Viviana is classmates with Lucia and that the two of them have become close friends. Alexandra observes that it was natural for Viviana to support the relationship between Lucia and Prince Alfonso. She considers that because her relationship with Viviana was already poor, it was completely expected for her sister to turn against her. Alexandra states that she does not care if Viviana hates her, but notes that a specific issue remains. She recognizes that Viviana is also one of the individuals who plans to publicly denounce her tomorrow. Alexandra states that she is angry with Viviana despite her being her sister. She determines that she cannot allow her sister to act out of line during the upcoming event. Alexandra considers how to prevent that outcome just as a sudden knock sounds at her door. Zenaida enters the room and announces that supper is ready. Alexandra states that she will attend immediately, internally noting that she has only one course of action left. Alexandra walks down the corridor, resolving to make Viviana regret turning against her. In the dining room, Esmeralda expresses her gratitude to her mother and father for their efforts during the day. The father accepts the praise and mentions that his work was easier because Cecilio helped him. Cecilio points out that his performance still does not match his father's capabilities. The mother tells Cecilio that he is doing an excellent job. The parents note that with Placido's engagement discussions settled, the family has many positive events to expect in the future. Alexandra and Viviana eat their meal in absolute silence while sitting across from each other. An uncomfortable silence fills the entire dining room as the family continues to eat. The father clears his throat and addresses Viviana, asking her about her activities for the day. Viviana replies that she had tea with her friends after school, prompting her father to state that it is good to stay close with school companions. Viviana agrees, while Alexandra reflects on the phrase school friends to herself. Viviana locks her gaze onto her sister, causing Alexandra to look back directly in response. She looks away with a scoff, which causes Alexandra to react with immediate irritation. Alexandra internally remarks that they will soon see how long her sister can maintain that specific behavior. Alexandra places her utensils down with a clink and announces to her family that she has a matter she wants to discuss despite being in the middle of their meal. Viviana turns her head toward her sister with a confused expression. The father looks at Alexandra and notes the unusually formal nature of her sudden announcement. Alexandra hesitates for a brief moment before beginning her statement. She formally announces to her family that she wishes to withdraw from her engagement with the crown prince. Her announcement shocks every family member at the table, causing Viviana to drop her food in surprise while Alexandra grips her hands tightly under the table and notes that she has successfully delivered the statement. The father calls out her name and asks if this choice is a sudden whim, but Alexandra clarifies that it is not. She explains that she has been thinking about this choice for a long time because she frequently doubts if she can truly support the prince. The mother protests by stating that Alexandra is performing excellently, but Alexandra continues with her explanation. Alexandra points out that her parents must already realize the situation has become completely impossible to fix no matter how hard she tries. She states that they have already heard the rumors regarding her bad behavior, and her father looks down while confirming that he has indeed heard them. The father tells Alexandra that her wrongdoings are still within the limits of what he can protect and cover for her. Alexandra thanks her father and notes his kindness, but she quickly offers her apologies to him. She internally reflects that she cannot yield at this point and states that she must avoid causing her father any more trouble. Alexandra considers that if she stops now, she will be the only one to face the blame even if they are rebuked, whereas any further actions will damage the name of their household. She states to her family that for the sake of their ducal household, she will withdraw from the engagement. The father remains completely silent as he processes her words. He explains that the country's empresses are always chosen from ducal houses and states that they must consider who will replace her if she steps down. Alexandra answers that if that is the case, they do not have any reason to worry. Alexandra points out that the family still has two other daughters available. Viviana and Esmeralda react with sudden shock upon hearing her suggestion. Father acknowledges that her statement is true, but she prepares to explain her specific perspective on the matter. Alexandra points out that there is someone of a similar age who regularly attends tea parties with the prince and her other school companions to intentionally deepen their relationship. She directly recommends Viviana as her replacement, causing Viviana to react with immediate sweat and distress. Viviana slams her hands onto the table and objects to the statement, but her father quickly cuts her off, explaining that this is a critical matter for the household and telling her to remain silent. Alexandra looks on with a small smirk while Viviana stands across from her, shaking with anger. The father asks Alexandra if she is entirely serious about her proposal, and Alexandra states that she is. The father announces that he will allow the arrangement, and when the mother speaks up in surprise, the father states that it is perfectly fine. The father adds that he has also noticed the crown prince's affection is no longer with Alexandra and has instead shifted entirely away from her. He concludes that if they let things continue on the current path, no good results will ever come from the arrangement. The father looks directly at Alexandra and states that she has experienced a very difficult time. Alexandra states that she is actually the one who should feel truly sorry. The father states that he will inform the king about the matter soon because the king will certainly understand the situation, while Viviana reacts with visible panic in her seat. Alexandra states that there is no need for her father to intervene because she plans to request a royal audience the next day to directly ask for the withdrawal of the engagement, and her father agrees to leave the matter to her. Alexandra calls out Viviana by name, causing her sister to flinch in surprise. She smiles gracefully at her sister while Viviana looks back with confusion, wondering what her sister intends to say. Alexandra gives a sharp glare and states that although she was unable to remain by the crown prince's side, she knows Viviana will become an excellent source of support for him. She instructs Viviana to treat the prince well, leaving her sister trembling from a sudden chill while Alexandra internally declares that she has won this interaction with 21 hours remaining. The fourth chapter begins with a theme of rank and pedigree. The door suddenly opens with a loud bang as a furious Viviana storms inside the room. Alexandra looks back over her shoulder calmly as her younger sister demands to know what she was thinking. Viviana stands by the double doors breathing heavily from her frantic arrival while Alexandra watches her silently from the desk. She looks at her sister and notes internally that Viviana arrived exactly as anticipated. While cleaning her writing tools at the desk, Alexandra asks what the sudden intrusion is about and states that it is quite rude to enter a room without knocking. Viviana fires back that her sister is one to talk about proper behavior. She stands angrily across the room and demands to know why Alexandra made such a sudden declaration during their meal. She continues her outburst, stating that she cannot believe for even a second that Alexandra is truly willing to give up the royal engagement. Alexandra calmly continues to clean her items and states that she already explained her reasons at the dinner table. She restates that she is simply not fit to stand by the side of the crown prince. Viviana clenches her fist and calls the statement a complete lie, asserting that there is no possible way Alexandra would abandon her position so easily. She insists that the choice makes no sense, especially after all the hostile actions Alexandra took against Lucia in the past. Alexandra reminds Viviana that she previously stated that her older sister was not suited for the royal engagement. Alexandra points out that Viviana has finally obtained what she wanted and tells her to celebrate the outcome. Viviana wonders what Alexandra is plotting and noting that her sister is the last person she would ever believe has changed her mind. Alexandra states that regardless of what Viviana says, she is still going to break off the engagement. She shifts her gaze slightly and asks if there is another reason for her sister's reaction. Alexandra asks if Viviana is simply angry about having to take her place as the future empress, leaving Viviana completely speechless. Viviana tries to deny the statement by saying that is not the case. Alexandra explains that the royal family stays powerful through its connections to the three great ducal houses, which makes a replacement a natural requirement. She leans back slightly and states that Viviana surely understood that reality already. Alexandra states that the role is not difficult because all Viviana has to do is give birth to the royal heir. Viviana objects, stating that she cannot fulfill that duty. She repeats her sister's words and asks if Viviana wants to step down simply because she is friends with the potato girl. Viviana stays silent while Alexandra narrows her eyes and addresses her directly. Alexandra asks Viviana if she has any understanding of what her words actually imply. She states that Viviana is not satisfied with removing her from the position and now wants to abandon the family duty entirely, which would force the royal family to blend with common blood. Viviana reacts with sudden shock. Viviana tries to argue that she did not mean it that way, but her voice is cut off as Alexandra slams her fist down on the desk with a loud thud. She shouts back that Viviana's statement means exactly that. Viviana flinches in silence from her older sister's sudden outburst. Alexandra sighs and relaxes her posture, noting that she hit the desk unintentionally. She adds that it is fine and states that if Viviana hates the arrangement so much, she will simply ask the women from the other noble houses to take the position instead, leaving Viviana completely stunned. Viviana panics and loudly objects, stating that she wants anything except that outcome. Alexandra looks at her sister and tells her to clean up after her own mess instead. She explains that it has been a long time since their household last produced a queen consort and reminds Viviana that she understands the high importance of that legacy. Alexandra reflects internally that her personal love for the prince was not the only reason she remained attached to the engagement. A memory shows a younger Alexandra who recalls how she carried the weight of the future reputation of their ducal house on her shoulders from a very young age. The internal reflection continues as Alexandra notes she was never allowed to fail, which is why she worked hard and endured for so long, before she suddenly stands up from her desk with a clatter and steps forward to point directly at her sister. Alexandra towers over Viviana and firmly tells her to listen, stating that as daughters of the ducal house and with Alfonso as the crown prince, this duty is their unchangeable fate. She adds that Viviana's personal feelings are completely irrelevant in this matter, leaving Viviana to look down in silent hesitation. Viviana tries to find an alternative and suggests that they could simply have one of the dukes adopt Lucia to fix the situation. Alexandra sighs and clarifies that the entire arrangement relies strictly on pedigree and not just noble rank. She cries out and asks if Alexandra expects her to simply ignore the mutual affection between the crown prince and Lucia. Alexandra states that their personal feelings are completely irrelevant to the matter and notes that they are free to spend the rest of their lives together for all she cares, causing Viviana to stutter in confusion. She instructs her sister to focus on the larger consequences and consider the status of a future child born from a union between Alfonso and Lucia. Alexandra details the situation further by asking if Viviana truly expects the great ducal houses and the rest of high society to recognize a child of that heritage as the legitimate next monarch. She maintains her quiet gaze while a sweating Viviana stands completely stunned, internally reflecting on how she failed to realize this harsh political reality until now. Alexandra explains that the crown prince is only one of 3 royal brothers and clarifies that if either of the younger siblings secures a child with a ducal house, the right to the throne will go straight to that branch instead. Viviana looks down and wonders what will happen next, which prompts Alexandra to look back with a confident smile and offer a new solution. Alexandra raises a finger and proposes that Alfonso could choose to give up his title as the crown prince entirely to live as a standard noble. Viviana reacts with sudden shock as Alexandra concludes that if the prince chooses to renounce the throne, no one in the kingdom will object to his marriage to Lucia. Alexandra points out that since the prince and Lucia love each other, social status should not matter. She then asks Viviana what is wrong. Viviana grips her dress tightly in silence. Alexandra observes her sister's quiet response and notes internally that Viviana has finally realized the reality of the situation. Alexandra reflects internally on Lucia's greed, describing her as someone who pursues multiple men for power. She considers that Lucia does not have enough genuine love to stay with Alfonso if he loses his title as crown prince. She concludes her thoughts by noting that Lucia only desires the title of the crown prince. Alexandra expresses irritation, thinking that others are hypocrites for claiming she only views the prince for his royal title. Zenaida knocks and enters the room to announce that the departure preparations are ready. Alexandra thanks the maid and states that she is leaving immediately. While Zenaida helps her put on a cloak, Alexandra asks if the letter requesting a royal audience was received. The maid confirms that the letter will be delivered to the king, and Alexandra approves. Viviana stands silently with her back turned while Alexandra looks toward her before leaving. Alexandra calls out her sister's name, causing Viviana to flinch. Alexandra tells her to use this time to think very carefully about her own position. The doors close with a sharp clack, leaving Viviana standing completely alone in the room in absolute silence. Outside the estate, the night sky hangs quietly over the empty city streets. A horse-drawn carriage travels toward another large estate under the crescent moon with exactly 20 hours remaining before the scheduled event. Fresh tea is poured into a fine cup as a host expresses genuine surprise at the unannounced arrival. The host is revealed to be the ducal daughter Carolina, who sits gracefully on her couch and notes that she did not expect a visitor at such a late hour. Alexandra expresses her gratitude to Carolina for hosting her so late at night. Carolina replies that she does not mind at all since she heard the situation was an urgent matter. Carolina points out that it must be cold outside and invites her guest to have a warm cup of tea, prompting Alexandra to thank her as Carolina dismisses her attendants to wait outside. Alexandra reflects internally that Carolina is the same age as her and counts as one of her close friends, noting that in the original game script, Carolina remained a neutral character who occasionally assisted both the heroine and the villain. Alexandra continues her internal thoughts, recalling that although Carolina did not appear frequently in the game, her status as a duke's daughter gave her major influence among the students at the academy. She sips her tea while considering that gaining Carolina's support will significantly increase her chances of success during the meeting tomorrow. Carolina then addresses her directly to ask about the true purpose of her sudden late-night visit. Carolina chuckles and asks if Alexandra has finally come to hand over the royal engagement to her instead. Alexandra answers that it is at least one of the options she is currently considering, which causes Carolina to look up with sudden surprise. Carolina asks for clarification on whether her friend is truly being serious about the matter. Alexandra looks down at her cup and explains that she had to think over the decision a lot, but she came tonight to state clearly that she has resolved to step down from the engagement. She asks if Alexandra is choosing to let that vixen have the crown prince. Alexandra clarifies that this is not the case, explaining that she has simply run out of patience for the prince. Carolina closes her eyes and lets out a sigh, remarking that the choice still makes a significant difference. She notes that the entire situation has deteriorated to such an extreme extent that even Alexandra is actively choosing to withdraw from the arrangement. Alexandra places her teacup down, stating her belief that the prince intends to pressure her into retiring during the meeting tomorrow anyway, using her past actions against Lucia as his primary excuse. Carolina notes that such an outcome is entirely possible. She remarks that even the once wise crown prince has become a complete prisoner to that vixen, adding that the prince might no longer understand the high importance of a royal ducal engagement, which Alexandra confirms. Alexandra focuses her gaze directly ahead and states that because of this situation, she has a specific request for Carolina. Carolina asks to know what that request involves. She references the upcoming event where the others plan to publicly declare how evil she is, asking Carolina to help defend her during that moment. Carolina asks if this means Alexandra wants her to cover for her actions. Alexandra clarifies that she is actually worried about being falsely accused of things she has never done. She notes internally that the sequence matches the original game events exactly, explaining aloud that the potato girl has already blamed her privately in front of the crown prince for the actions of other people. Carolina continues her thought, stating honestly that the girl is highly unusual because she causes all the gentlemen at court to fall for her one after another. She notes that in complete contrast to her cute looks, the girl possesses a terrifying level of perception and foresight, allowing her to win over all the gentlemen with absolute ease. Carolina adds that it is entirely natural for all the young noble ladies to dislike her for that behavior. She expresses her deep confusion regarding what kind of person the girl truly is. Alexandra breaks the silence by asking Carolina if she knows the actual origin of the term vixen. Carolina reacts with surprise and admits that she has never thought about it too deeply. Alexandra explains that the expression comes from a historical event in a country in the Far East during the height of its prosperity, where a fox demon transformed into a beautiful woman to deceive the emperor with constant pleasures, causing the leader to lose his focus and the country to begin its decline. She concludes that the nation ultimately collapsed because of the deception. She then slides a paper across the table and states that she will leave the item with Carolina. Carolina looks down at the folder on the table and asks what the document contains. Alexandra invites her companion to look over the material directly. Carolina remains silent as she flips the page open to inspect the contents. Carolina opens her eyes wide in complete shock as she scans the text on the page. Alexandra calmly calls out to her to keep her focus on the matter. She looks forward with a serious expression and states that the actions of that woman match the nature of a vixen perfectly, concluding that she may indeed be destroying the entire country. Carolina remains silent for a quiet moment while processing the information before addressing her companion by name. Carolina adopts a determined expression and asks to serve as Alexandra's ally, asserting that the vixen cannot be allowed to act as she pleases any further. Alexandra responds with a confident smile, expressing her gratitude to Carolina and stating that she is now in her debt. The 5th chapter begins with a focus on the relaxation of the ladies as Alexandra sits alone in her room and braids her hair. With 19 hours remaining before the scheduled event, Alexandra returns home under the crescent moon and collapses onto her bed with a long sigh. Lying flat on her back, Alexandra notes her absolute exhaustion and reflects that she has successfully completed everything she needed to do for the day. She raises her hand and considers her schedule for the next morning, stating to herself that she must meet with the king first thing to ask for the dissolution of the engagement. Alexandra looks forward in silence as she mentally repeats her formal statement requesting to withdraw from her engagement with the crown prince. She suddenly sits up on the bed and considers that the phrase sounds much sadder than she expected. Alexandra lets out a quiet sigh and determines that the current situation cannot be helped. She walks toward the large curtains and reflects that up until half a day ago she was someone who truly loved the prince, before she flips the fabric aside. Looking through the window at the night sky and the moon, Alexandra wonders where exactly things went wrong between herself and the prince. Alexandra considers if the issue was the fact that she lost her temper or the fact that she felt jealous of the potato girl. She further reflects on whether she was simply not attractive enough for the prince. Alexandra concludes that it is likely none of those reasons because her current world is a game where her specific role is simply to be hated by the crown prince. She realizes that a future where she could be with him never existed, noting to herself that although she knew this outcome was coming, it remains an instance of unrequited love. Looking down, Alexandra reflects that the current pain in her chest is exactly the same as the pain she experienced during her past life. A sudden knock sounds at the door as Zenaida apologizes for the intrusion, prompting Alexandra to respond from the window before the maid notes her location and advises her to take a bath and rest because staying up late will affect her performance the next day. Alexandra agrees with the statement and tells her attendant that she will follow the advice immediately. Alexandra moves to the large bathhouse where steam rises from the warm water as her attendant helps her unfasten her clothing. Zenaida announces that she will take her leave for the night and instructs Alexandra to call for her if she requires any further assistance. Alexandra looks back and asks Zenaida if she is not coming into the bath as well. Zenaida reacts with surprise and declines the invitation, but Alexandra insists that she join her just for today, causing Zenaida to repeat that she would prefer not to do so. Alexandra begins tossing Zenaida's clothing away and states that it is fine to relax occasionally, ordering her to prepare quickly while Zenaida calls out to her mistress in protest. Zenaida ultimately gives in to the demand and begins scrubbing her mistress's back, which leads Alexandra to state that the massage feels excellent while Zenaida stands by in silence. Alexandra calls out to Zenaida, prompting the maid to ask what she needs. She looks to the side and asks her attendant if she thinks she is pretty. Zenaida confirms the statement immediately, telling Alexandra that her mistress is very beautiful. Alexandra agrees with the compliment and states that she is definitely attractive, leaving Zenaida to watch her in silence. Alexandra was created with an extraordinary level of beauty that anyone would envy, specifically to highlight the simplicity of the potato girl. Alexandra has the power to charm noblemen just by walking past them while possessing true refinement and education on the inside, yet her circumstances remain difficult. She remarks with a sigh that love simply does not progress smoothly, prompting Zenaida to agree completely with her mistress's statement. Alexandra asks her attendant if she has someone she is currently seeing, and Zenaida reveals that she is actually going to be engaged soon. Alexandra reacts with surprise and states that Zenaida is leaving her behind to find happiness alone, which causes Zenaida to laugh quietly while asking to be excused. Zenaida comments that her mistress could use a bit more restraint, making Alexandra think that her attendant was supposed to be on her side. Alexandra then holds out the sponge and tells Zenaida to take it. Alexandra tells her attendant to hand over the sponge and announces that she is going to wash her instead. Zenaida tries to object, but Alexandra dismisses the protest by stating that she simply feels like doing it. Zenaida looks at her mistress and notes that Alexandra seems like a completely different person today. Alexandra asks if that is truly the case, and Zenaida confirms that she is quite different from yesterday, asking if she may know what happened as someone who serves her, which causes Alexandra to freeze in place. Alexandra remains silent for a moment before declaring that she received an oracle, causing a bewildered Zenaida to repeat the word. Zenaida has water poured over her shoulders and notices Alexandra walking away toward the large pool, calling out to her mistress as Alexandra dips her foot into the water. She relaxes completely inside the warm bath and notes that the water feels wonderful, before clarifying to Zenaida that her situation is not exactly a divine oracle. Floating in the pool, Alexandra explains that she has somehow come to know every event that will happen from this moment onward, using the upcoming day as a primary example. As Zenaida listens closely, Alexandra sits in the water and states that she is fated to be rejected by the crown prince. She leans her head back and adds that her companions, her sister Viviana, and even her own parents will eventually turn against her. Looking back toward her attendant, Alexandra clarifies that this upcoming betrayal naturally includes Zenaida as well. She looks at Zenaida from the water and explains that this dark future is the exact reason she previously secured her loyalty with money. Zenaida steps into the water and reflects that while the information is sudden and difficult to believe, it is highly probable that someone employed by the ducal household would end up in that exact situation. Resting her arms on the edge of the stone bath, Alexandra states that she is currently putting all of her effort into a difficult struggle to completely erase that future. Alexandra explains that she cannot simply lie down and accept a future where everything she has done up until now would be entirely meaningless. Zenaida remains completely silent as she looks down and processes the weight of her mistress's words. Alexandra looks closely at her attendant and maintains her quiet focus. She thanks Zenaida for her hard work during the day and instructs her to prepare herself because tomorrow will be equally busy. Zenaida pauses for a brief moment before offering a gentle smile and confirming that she will certainly comply. Zenaida asks if she may be allowed to ask a question, prompting Alexandra to invite her to speak. She directly asks her mistress if it is true that she genuinely loved the crown prince. Alexandra confirms the statement, explaining that she truly loved him and was completely prepared to spend her life by his side as his partner. Zenaida asks if it is truly acceptable to give up on that relationship so easily, but Alexandra calmly answers that it is perfectly fine. Alexandra explains that she has already lost interest in the prince and certainly does not want to be the one who gets dumped. She reflects internally that while the pain in her chest is real, it was never anything like an unwavering true love in the first place. Alexandra considers whether a love that remains intact no matter what actually exists. She ponders the idea of a storybook love where a person would even abandon morality for the sake of their partner. A flashback shows a young Alexandra standing over a crying boy near a large building, demanding to know if he fell down again and calling him clumsy. She reaches out to help the boy, causing him to blush as they hold hands. The boy offers his thanks with a bright smile, leaving the young Alexandra staring at him in surprise. Back in the present, Alexandra focuses forward and reacts with sudden confusion. Alexandra silently wonders why a childhood memory about that crying person suddenly returned to her mind, before Zenaida calls out to her mistress to get her attention. Zenaida notices a change in her mistress and asks if something is wrong, prompting Alexandra to explain that she simply felt a bit dizzy. Zenaida states that the situation is bad and advises returning to the bedroom so she can fetch some water. The scene shifts back to the bedroom where Alexandra rests under the blankets while her attendant stands nearby. Zenaida holds a tray with a pitcher and glass and asks how her mistress is feeling now, allowing Alexandra to state that she has successfully regained her composure and is perfectly fine. Zenaida states that she will return to her own quarters and requests that Alexandra call for her if any further assistance is needed, to which Alexandra agrees. Lying in bed, Alexandra offers her gratitude to Zenaida. Zenaida stops and turns around with a highly surprised expression, causing Alexandra to notice the reaction and state her confusion. Zenaida explains that it is simply highly unusual for her to receive gratitude from her mistress, prompting Alexandra to realize internally that offering thanks is actually a habit carried over from her previous life. Zenaida calls out Lady's name to gain her attention once more. She offers a gentle smile and states her sincere hope that Alexandra will be blessed with a much better match next time. Alexandra asks her attendant if she is making fun of her, but Zenaida clarifies that those are her true feelings. Alexandra reflects on a past comment about her having a distinct personality that she does not dislike, concluding that she agrees with the statement. The maid tells her mistress to rest well, and Alexandra wishes her a good night before the door clicks shut and she drifts off to sleep. The scene transitions to the royal palace back entrance under the night sky, where armed guards stand watch at the gates. A hooded figure carrying a candle sneaks through the dark stone hallways of the palace, looking around carefully as he moves. A sudden voice from the shadows orders the person to stop immediately, catching the hooded man by surprise. The hooded man turns around as footsteps approach, facing the individual who just walked into the corridor. The individual is revealed to be Third Prince Gerald, who demands to know exactly where his older brother is going.